When an entrepreneur hits the top 10 status of entrepreneurs, there's a desire deep inside to get into the top 1%. This is always true. Any entrepreneur who does what it takes to get into the top 10% of entrepreneurs wants in at the 1%. And they'll do whatever it takes to get it. But there's a barrier and there's a block. It's always there. It is the hardest block to get through. And it's always the same problem. It just has different forms. So here's what it looks like at the top 10%. Imagine a triangle. At the top of the triangle is freedom. What's happened is there's enough money now to have conditional freedom. In other words, conditioned on the money, the ability to run the business and other factors that are outside of our control. There's enough time to have a illusion of freedom, which isn't really freedom because it's conditional on things that can be taken away. The other thing that happens in the top 10% level is satisfaction with meaningful, purposeful vision. Ordinary entrepreneurs are delivering solutions to problems that don't matter. They don't mean anything. Top 10% entrepreneurs have purpose-driven visions. There's something elevating and important. Now, it's not enough because it's still conditional. We'll get into that in a minute. But they've got that. They've got that feeling of, wow, I'm living my purpose. I'm living my dream. I love what I do. Limited, but top 10%. Now, the bottom left of the triangle, happiness, shows up in an external way. In other words, work-life balance, typically. So there's been an opportunity to move from the focus, the intensity of, I got the dog behind me, realizing that purpose-driven vision. And because it's starting to work, there's a movement down the bottom of the triangle towards the left, towards personal happiness, which often shows up like work-life balance for many people. That isn't sustainable to get into the top 1%. Now, for some people, it's okay. The problem is it's going to be temporary because external factors must be present to maintain that position, which requires a lot of work. So what happens? So I'm going to explain what people normally do when they're trying to get to the top 1%, and then I'm going to talk about what the top 1% looks like and how to get there. What happens is normally there's a let me find an external solution to help me. So there's a definition. What is my problem? What are the symptoms of my problem? Now, people in the top 10% don't buy for symptoms. They don't buy out of pain. They buy out of strategic thought. So then they're thinking, what's the root cause of the symptom that I have? And then what's the solution? And usually at this level, people are pretty well connected and they know who's good. They're buying based on authority. This is a persuasion principle. Someone who's got the lab coat on, basically, because they've been proven out. So there's often social proof, where there's a friend who said, that person was amazing, changed my life. Often it's a coach solution. So what happens? The coach will often deliver top 10% solutions to get people into the top 10% because that's where the coach is. They're not in the top 1%. That's the problem. Because their program was created by them. Okay? It's a paradox, and I'm going to explain in a minute. So what that looks like is usually some training around peak performance or mindset or business system optimization and mastery. What happens? You think a little better, you feel a little bit better. Your performance improves, peak performance. You use your time better. You're more effective. and you're really focused and you're better at some of the things in your business. Well, what just happened? You're exactly where you are. You're just better at it. You're better at the same thing. You're better at being in the top 10%. That's not going to work. What's the top 1%? How do you get there? You do the opposite of what everyone else does in the top 10%. The top 1%, the top of the triangle, is real freedom. Freedom is inside. Freedom is, my mind is open. I don't need anybody. There's no condition. There's no money that frees me. There's no lifestyle that frees me. There's no delegation. I've already done all that. I got into that top 10% years ago with the company that I bootstrapped. Now, don't measure 10% or 1% based on revenue delivered. That doesn't matter. It's not relevant. What's relevant are the experiences in the triangle. So what happens then? Freedom. Freedom inside, freedom of imagination, creative imagination opens completely, and we have access to very, very powerful energy. That's how Picasso painted his paintings. That's how Leonardo da Vinci drew. That's how Mother Teresa was able to live in conditions that were horrible and be happy in them and feel a sense of inner freedom. Action freedom. The ability to act regardless of conditional circumstances. So there's no struggle anymore. It's not a flow state where you feel in flow because there's something you're doing that you love doing. That's a flow state, not flow. It's a flow experience in a flow state. Flow is feeling that connected movement forward all the time, regardless of what you're doing and regardless of whether you like what you're doing or not. That's flow. In Taoism, they call that walking in the Wu Wei. It's called doing, not doing. Top 1% entrepreneurs are living in flow. Not all the time. I take it back sometimes. But I have a choice. I know what it is, and I can take it back. And now I don't very often anymore because I've built that now as a routine and a habit. So what else happens? Happiness is no longer conditional on circumstances. Do you think that Stephen Hawking was happy when he had a life where, from what I understand, women loved him? He was very athletic. He was very successful as a so-called man about town, as well as the smartest person in the room when it came to math and physics. And he lost all of it. Yes, it was a tough transition. If you ask Stephen Hawking, and we can't, unfortunately, but I think he said things like this, if he is happier having lost all of that, the answer would be yes. That was Christopher Reeve's answer. I'm glad this happened to me. Why? Because he gained internal freedom. The happiness from internal freedom is no longer conditional. It's yours. Nobody can take it away. That's a top 1% entrepreneur. How do you get there? There's only one way that has as many variations as there are individuals. In other words, everything we were taught is wrong. That's the price of entry, is recognizing that every belief system you have was wrong because it's not your personal experience. It's a belief. It's a belief. And those beliefs tie you to the mundane reality of the world where you have to have results to feel okay in your internal state. That is the human condition. That is the prison. Everything we were taught is wrong. The red pill pathway is not my pathway. The red pill pathway has always been true, is true now, and has always been true. It was given to me as a messenger. That's it. All I had to do was recognize that inside myself there is an emptiness that is joyful emptiness that I could open up when I recognized that everything that I knew was wrong. Everything I was taught was wrong. And then I replaced that with experiences of touching truth. When that happens, everything changes and you enter the top 1%, measured by inner freedom, unlimited, unconditional happiness, and a feeling that the vision you're creating has meaning of the sort that matters the most in this world, where you are alleviating and lightening the burden of humanity and doing the people you're helping and doing what you can to play your role, meaningful role in evolving the trajectory of the human race.